Hello, welcome back. In this lecture we are going to set up the wormhole object. The wormhole object will also flow along the curve at the same speed as our camera. The wormhole object will be a cylinder, to which we will apply the wormhole procedural shader in a later video. So, let's dive right in, and add a cylinder object. Make sure it is placed at the center of the grid, or the origin point of our curve. We can change the amount of vertices to be 16 instead of 32. We can also change the radius of our cylinder, so that it is around double the size of our camera, when viewed from top view. Then, we can also rotate the cylinder 90 degrees on its y-axis, so that it looks similar as shown in the video. To increase the length of the cylinder, we can increase the depth value. Remember that these add cylinder options disappears when you start manipulating the object, or go into edit mode of the object. Then, we can go into edit mode of the cylinder object. We can add around 10 edge loops. This is needed, since the cylinder needs to bend when traversing the curve. Another thing we need to do, is to delete the round end-ons at both ends of the cylinder, so that it effectively becomes a tube. So let's call this contraption a tube from now on. Then we can select the first edge loop on the left side, and scale it down a little. We can do the same for the next edge loop, but scale it down a little less than the first one. The next thing we can do, is to add a subdivision modifier via the modifier's properties. This will give our tube more polygons. Since in our shading process we will be using the UV coordinates, we need to UV unwrap our cylinder. To do this, we first need to add a seam to the edge loop running in the length of our tube, as shown. With our red-colored seam, we can drag out another window and set it to the UV image editor. Then we can select all the faces of our tube and unwrap it. You can see the UVs laid out in the UV editor. In order to make the tube traverse the curve, we need to set a curve modifier, via the Modifier tab of the Properties panel. We can set the curve as the object. You will see the tube bending along the curve right away. Now we want to switch the direction of the tube, so that the smaller end comes first. We can do this, by changing the deformation axis to -x. To see our camera in our tube, I am just going to set the object display to wire. Also I will disable the visibility of the subdivision modifier that we set for the tube. Now we are able to see the camera better. After bringing up the properties region with the N hotkey, we can slide the location X value of our tube. This will make our tube or wormhole move along the curve. You'll notice we actually have to move the value to the minus range, since on our curve modifier the deformation axis is also on -x. We can change the location X value, so that our camera is located around the middle of the last half of our tube. Then, we can keyframe the location X value on frame 1. This would then be the start location of our wormhole. With our active frame on frame 350, we can slide the location X value of the tube so that the camera matches up again within the middle of the second half of the tube. This is needed since we need the bigger part of the wormhole in front of our camera. Once the tube is placed, we can keyframe the location X value. However, when we move the time slider, we see that our camera does not keep in the same position, in relation to the tube. This is because the interpolation of our tube is not yet set to linear. So after having opened the graph editor in a new window, we can again see our lines of our animated tube. With the eye icon you can also toggle the visibility, which can be rather helpful. So let's change the interpolation by bringing up the menu with the T key and choosing linear. Now you can see our camera lines up the way we want it, for the entire duration of the animation. In camera view mode, we can change the display of the wormhole to solid, to get a better idea what we are looking at. Now, when playing the animation, you can see our camera nicely aligned with our tube. Even after setting up all the animation stuff, we are still able to manipulate the handles of our curve without causing any problems with the animation itself. So you can still change the shape of the curve and see the wormhole complying with the changes. So that's it for setting up our wormhole in camera. In the next section we are going to start creating the shader for the wormhole. Thanks for watching. And if you like this course so far, feel free to give an honest rating.